Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Daily AI Show Live. It is 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific, and we appreciate y'all being here. It is Monday, October 20th. On today's show, we're going to start with the news as we always do. We got some really interesting stories that have come out over the last couple of days. Nothing new there. And then we're going to get into two sort of topics. One of them, the main topic, is going to be talking about the AI bubble. And is it about the burst? Is it similar to the dot-com bubble? Where is it dissimilar? What kind of indicators are people talking about? And this, Andy and I were talking about this before the show went live. This is something that's getting a lot of attention in October. So very recent sort of news there, but we'll talk about that in one of our main segments. And then also we're going to keep it out of the news because we have a segment on as well. Google AI Studio just did some rebranding, refreshing. They sort of merged a couple different things, really cool stuff in there. And so we thought, you know what, let's do that as sort of our tool review since everybody does technically have access to it. There's some API stuff in it. And so we're going to spend some time sharing a screen and talking about what we love inside of Google AI Studio and what they've done differently based off of what they had previously. Okay, so there's the setup for the show today. Thanks for everybody joining already in the chat, Jeff and everybody else. Appreciate y'all being here. And Andy, let's kind of get into the news. And one of the news stories that I definitely saw that I thought was interesting was a interview that happened with Andre Karpathy. And yeah, you're shaking your head. Is that one you had as well for the news?
But I saw in the newsletters this morning. I saw a blurb about it. Yeah.
So the big headline here is no AGI until 2035. Now, I will say, because you just mentioned the newsletters and stuff, the majority of what I have here comes from the Neuron, and they do a wonderful job. They're a great newsletter. I want to make sure I give them props and go check them out or subscribe to the Neuron. It's free because they did kind of a breakdown of, I guess, what was like a 2.5 hour interview. Now, I will at some point go listen to this whole interview because I do like what Andrew has to say. He's a big voice inside of AI. And so it's interesting. So the way they started off is they say no AGI until 2035, ? AI pioneer Andre Karpathy. Is it Andre or Andrew? Andrew. Anyway, Karpathy argues that true AI agents are still a decade away as today's models are just impressive autocomplete tools with major, quote, cognitive deficits that can only be fixed by a long, slow march of nines towards reliability. So I had to look that up too. And they mentioned here, like, what is the march of nines? And it says, this is the Neuron talking about this. And it says his favorite analogy comes from his time leading self-driving at Tesla. And by the way, he's been a big part of Tesla, a big part of OpenAI. He's been around. And what he says is, like, this is the march of nines. Getting a demo to work 90% of the time is the easy part. Getting from 90 to 99 takes just as long. And getting from 99 to 99.9 takes just as long again. That's why he's, quote, extremely unimpressed by demos, unquote, and believes the path to true useful AI will be a long, slow grind, or at least another decade, not a sudden explosion. So he goes on to talk, and we can talk about this more too, but one of the things he blasts is reinforcement learning, and says it's like the thing we have that's better than the thing we had before, but let's not put it up on a pedestal. Let's not celebrate it too much. It's not going to basically get us where we need to go. We've heard that before, right, Andy, where people have said, hey, reinforcement learning is phenomenal, but I've heard a lot of people say perhaps it's just better than what we had, but it's not the technology we need to build on.
Let me just mention that one of the things that I saw today was research just released by Meta about a thing called a technique that improves reinforcement learning. And their technique is called implicit world modeling with self-reflection. And so what it does is it gives the model training in how to predict outcomes and explain subsequent to the prediction why the expert outcome would work best, like give it sort of decision or reasoning framework around that. And so they called this the early experience training method. And they tested it across 8 different domains with models like Llama 8 billion and Quen 7 billion. So smaller models, but this is, you don't do these kind of research tests on the massive frontier models. That's just too compute expensive. And it showed, this technique showed 9 to 18 point gains, and it scaled effectively to larger models when they did that. And it improved reinforcement learning performance, which means that subsequent to this kind of introductory training or early experience training, the large language models can then use reinforcement learning more effectively. So, example of something where, yeah, I think Andre's right. Yeah, reinforcement learning isn't all that, right? It's not going to lead to super intelligence magically, but there are always these interesting sort of algorithmic approaches in training that sort of collectively advance the science of how self-training by models, which is what we're asking reinforcement learning to do.
Right.
Give it a tool set that actually allows it to figure out on its own without a human saying, here, I'm going to give you the right answer so you can then mark that in your database. That's not it. We want it to be able to figure that out with a number of different techniques. And this is an example of that.
Yeah, I agree with you. So the question, it becomes like, is that, I don't want to call it a Band-Aid, but is that just one part of a long slog towards that getting from 90 to 99? And I think he even says, and we're nowhere close to 99, he makes that point as well. But maybe, not even a decade. Come on, that's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous amount of time on the timeline right now. We're 3 years in at this point. Let's say in another 3 years, is anybody even really talking about reinforcement learning, or are they talking about it perhaps by another term, or saying, oh, that is part of the story here. That's part of the AI story. It was necessary. We now have, to your point, maybe new hybrid methods. We have new methods for it to not really be about human reinforcement learning, but in fact, synthetic side reinforcement learning, and the models are taking care of it itself, as you just pointed out. So let me, before we jump to any other news stories, because I don't want to hang on this one too long, here's a couple predictions and forecasts that came out of, again, Neuron put a really great summary here. You can go to the Neuron, that's neuron.ai, the neuron.ai. And I just want to give them props because they did a great job with this, and I'm certainly leaning on this. All right, so it looks like right off the bat, achieving fully functional AI agents akin to in an intern or an employee is a decade-long project, not something that will be solved in a year. This is a reaction against current industry over-prediction. Another prediction, the cognitive core of intelligence could eventually be as small as 1 billion parameters. Current models are massive primarily because they are trained on total garbage. That's a quote from the internet, and are forced to waste capacity on memorization. Another prediction, the most likely superintelligence risk isn't a single God in a box, that's a quote, but a quote, gradual loss of control and understanding. I agree with that. As a society delegates tasks to multiple competing autonomous entities, some of which may go rogue. Two more here. Prediction, AI will not cause a sudden spike in the 2% GDP growth trajectory, just as computers and mobile phones are invisible in the GDP curve. AI's diffusion will be too slow and averaged out to create a sharp, discrete break in the trend. And finally, post-AGI, education will not be for utility, quote, jobs, or parentheses jobs, but for fun and self-betterment. Much like people go to the gym today for health and aesthetics, not for manual labor. So that's post-AGI, education will not be for jobs, basically, but for self-betterment. I don't know about that one, but he's a smart dude. Who am I to say? They're good. They're big predictions nonetheless, Andy. I think we could probably do a whole segment just on this, and maybe we will, but I wanted to bring it up for the news. Okay. Any last thoughts on that before we move?
No, that was a nice intro. Thanks.
All right, jump over to what's your next news story then?
Well, this is for you, my friend. Since you're so involved in sales, I came across this little nugget that I think you're going to be interested in, and you probably already know about it. But there's a company called Second Nature, and it creates lifelike avatars that let sales reps practice conversations and get instant feedback and improve performance through that simulation. It was founded in Tel Aviv by a couple of engineers. It raised 22 million in a Series B recently here in 2025. It's currently used by Gong, SAP, and ZoomInfo to scale sales training globally. So there's another arrow in the quiver for the sales improvement via AI.
Look, this is a big deal because I mean, there's several companies out there that are doing this or attempting to do this. Though I don't know this company, so I can't talk about it. Second Nature, but um, where we usually fall short is that it does not have a deeper set of knowledge. It's a little too broad when it does the trainings. And so we've solved for that at scale through like custom GPTs. But of course that can be a voice interaction, obviously through the voice mode. But there is certainly that next level of these avatars, really to me, where I think, and maybe they have solved for this, Andy. Again, I'm not talking from knowing what they do, but really what I think the true combo here is that yes, they have to be good at the interactions and carrying on the conversation. Also, AI is historically in sales, historically too easy. It is not representative of an actual call. If I cold called you right now, Andy, at 7:12 a.m. your time or whatever, you may be up for it. You may not be up for it. You may be very short and curt with me, considering I'm outside of hours, or you might be where your grandson. There could be 1,000 reasons, right? Or you might actually have a great conversation with me. And the
Yeah,
reality is,
I think
like,
that's an excellent point because the range of my responses to unsolicited sales calls
sure,
ranges from trying to be helpful to that person
right,
to really being pissy and
yeah.
prickly. Yeah.
And
So
God bless our salespeople who pick up the phone 100 times a day and take rejection in stride and have
yeah,
a goldfish brain about it, because you have to be able to move on quickly. The problem is, and like I said, if you're going to do something that's truly a an avatar or a helpful tool, Zoom Info gone great, they're using it. We deal with them all the time. To me, it has to be close enough to the types of calls, the range of calls, and it has to be able to be intelligent enough at that true role and sub-industry level. And anyway, from my experience, what we found, the reason we solve for this through like a custom GPT, is because you really have to go in there and do some real tweaking that's at that company level, at that role level and stuff. And anyway, these will get big enough and bad enough, and maybe we'll be able to take our prompting and roll that into a true avatar experience, like they're saying. But those have been the limitations we've been running into. So hey, maybe they have tried to solve for that, which would be great. What else you got? What other news stories? I may have one or two other ones
yeah,
here. I didn't have a ton this morning.
I've got a couple here.
Perfect.
The future is robots. And one of the first places you're going to see that, and already see that on our streets, is robo taxis. And Waymo has just released a new relationship with DoorDash. So I think you can now order on DoorDash in a Waymo Jaguar I-Pace vehicle. I think their first location's in Arizona somewhere, but a really beautiful all electric vehicle is going to zip up to your door with the DoorDash delivery. So it's kind of disintermediating DoorDash drivers as a job, but a very interesting development. And then the company that's behind Dodge, Ram, and Chrysler, and a bunch of European makes, including Peugeot and others, called Stellantis now. They're partnering with a company called Pony.ai
I've heard of that.
to develop autonomous robotaxis in Europe, starting with the Peugeot e-Traveler model. So again, an all-electric vehicle, autonomous robotaxi set to launch next year.
So the first part that I wondered is, like, it's not even the last mile, it's the last 100 feet. So the Jaguar I-Pace or I-Type, whatever that is, I've seen those vehicles. They are pretty vehicles.
Yeah.
By the way, they should really be using Cybertrucks because they can't. That was one of the news stories. Is Elon is having to sell his surplus of Cybertrucks to SpaceX and other basically Elon Musk companies, because there's a surplus of them. Anyway, what happens though? Like, so that my question on that is, like, okay, my front door to the street is 20 feet. I'm not an issue, right? I'm right here. You could, but like lots of people have long driveways, tall driveways, whatever. Right now, if you have Uber or DoorDash, these folks are getting out in the rain, they're getting out in the snow, and they're taking your hopefully still warm meal, if that's what you ordered, and they're bringing it to your door and they're ringing your bell or whatever this is. I don't really order a lot of food, quite honestly. I can never get over paying the surplus in price for it. I'd rather just go get it myself. But lots of people do. I get it. Why you would do that in a city. It would take you longer to get to your car, to get it out of the parking deck. Just pay somebody to bring it to you. But my point to this is like, okay, great. I get it, the robo-taxis, but is the Optimus getting out of the robo-taxi and bringing it to my door? Like, how are we getting the food that last 100 feet? It still seems like you need a human. Unless it's like, hey, I'm at the street, come down and find me.
If you're disabled, yeah, I see that. But DoorDash, we use DoorDash, and quite often we'll go out to meet the driver who pulls up right into our entryway here.
Yeah,
we'll go out there to interact with the driver. I think it'll just be as simple as, there'll be voice interaction with the robotaxi, and the door will open. There's your stuff, and you'll just reach in to take it out. The door will automatically close, and it'll drive away. So I think it's practical for those people who don't need somebody to actually, cross the threshold with the delivery.
So this brings up the whole point, and I don't want to get too off of it because it's probably a bigger thing. It's not really news per se, but like this is the whole Tesla self-driving versus Waymo versus some vehicles that are, I can't think of the one I want to think of. It's in Orlando. It was built from the ground up, like on a skateboard for delivery, right? And I almost wonder with this, Andy, because like you say that and I go, yeah, that makes sense. And then I also go, wait, well, what about the next 3 deliveries? How do you, if there's no human involved, people do human things. They take other food that they shouldn't have. The door opens, and it just like a car brings up these complexities of like like the robot doesn't know that your food got taken out of the trunk when they also took their own food on the last stop. You know what I mean? And so I wonder if the real solution here is going to be this hybrid of these little beep beeps that go down the sidewalks. You see that they're delivering Chick-fil-A or whatever from DoorDash, and something that's like Amazon's going to partner with like a Rivian, right? Or something like that, because Rivian makes the Amazon delivery trucks. That's going to be purpose built for this. They're going to have like hot and cold boxes, right? And they're going to show up in your little Amazon
compartments. Like, so you have like the boxes at Whole Foods.
Exactly right. That's exactly what I think is going to have to happen. So it's interesting to me. And I'm like, yeah, all for like the robo taxis bring my food. But I also go like, I don't know, it almost causes more problems than it's probably worth. So we'll have to see kind of where this goes or whatever, but it's a fun conversation. I mean, who doesn't want like a Jaguar to pull up in front of their house and pop the trunk and there's my food? I mean, it'd be fun. It'd be fun to do it once or twice, right? Yeah. So, all right. Did you have any other quick ones before we sort of pivot here?
Not a quick one. I have a bunch of stuff that's related to advances in reasoning and LLM performance, but it's just a little deeper than we have time for today, because we have a very interesting subject to talk about here, which is the AI bubble.
Exactly. Kick it off if you like. Yeah. I mean, I know you and I mean, Beth is, by the way, poor Beth has tried to come in and out 10 times into the show and she cannot get her audio working. So Beth is kind of sort of here and trying to be here. So hopefully we'll get her in this conversation. But yeah, Andy, why don't you kind of kick off this conversation? I know you did some research. I did some research, and let's just sort of, if you can like tee it up, and then let's just kind of talk about it a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm a long-term optimist about AI, and at the same time, there's a lot of hype involved, and there's a very significant and extreme valuation that's being placed on the AI companies in the world, and to the degree that they now represent, some enormous percentage, something like 35% of the S&P 500 are these sort of AI involved companies, the Magnificent Seven, so to speak. And so there have been a lot of comparisons. There's a growing, klaxon sounding about, we're in a bubble and it's going to pop. And this happened in my lifetime, and it raised much of my wealth in the dot bust of 2000, after, this incredible run up. When there was this transformative narrative that was out there, which was the internet will change everything, and everything's going to be there. And so pile in with your money and your investments into those internet companies. And then suddenly in early April, actually, of 2000, suddenly all of those stocks just collapsed. Similarly, today we have this argument that AI is transformative. It's going to change everything, and it's going to have a principal, if not dominant or monopolistic control over our economy. And so it's the AI companies that are going to be the beneficiaries. So put your money there. There's a lot of investment surge that's involved there, just like there was back in the internet days when they were trying to build optic fiber to support the broadband future. And now we're doing the same kind of thing with massive data center infrastructure. And there's this possibility that we're over investing in those things. And so that's going to lead to a collapse. And then, there's a lot of worry right now around this circular financing that's happening where, hey, NVIDIA's making a ton of money and now they're investing in OpenAI so that OpenAI can buy more chips.
Yeah.
Well, there's something, you wish that there were a little broader support than just the companies that are like in this focused circular arrangement.
Yeah, and then are they like? Here's the other part that just real quick on that part that I don't get, Andy, and I'm certainly nowhere close to a financial savant or expert or anything. I have a lot to learn, but I'll throw this to you. And by the way, Beth was able to join us. Welcome, Beth. I think we just willed you in. We were just saying like Beth is struggling to get it working, but so I'm glad you're here too. So this goes to either of you. But how is not I guess legal, Andy or Beth, but okay, if a bunch of companies, SoftBank, others have come out and said, all right, here's the deal. I'm going to buy your stuff. You're going to buy Timmy's stuff over there. Timmy's going to buy my stuff. And I'm going to be able to buy stuff. But then they're also able to show that as like, I guess, profit, or it leads to valuation. And I mean, without me even having a brain really for this, I struggle with finances and stuff like that to like really get into the microeconomics. But I even look at that on a piece of paper and I go, that ain't right. That sounds like a house of cards to me. So am I missing something, or is that literally like, yeah, this is a thing and people do that, companies do this?
Well, it's a strategic and a partnership investment in the most favorable view of it, right? It's that NVIDIA is acquiring an economic interest in OpenAI, so they'll benefit not just from their own investment and the turnaround of purchases of their own product, but OpenAI is not just buying from NVIDIA, right? They've announced partnerships with other chip manufacturers, and so there is a competitive sort of stop valve on the too close in partnership that might result in a monopolistic control over the overall AI platform, with the leader in the sort of infrastructure area working with the leader in the approaching 1 billion users demand marketplace for the AI services. So I think that it's fine. They're buying equity in the company, and that money that you give to own an interest in the future performance of that company is being used in part, to buy your own products. So you can make an argument that it's not really all that ugly.
Sorry, well, okay, yeah, go ahead, Beth. Sorry.
I think one of the things that is tricky about this is that there is no historical pattern about AI profit like far into the future, right? So we're still in the, wow, these are new. It's still newly being developed in many ways. We have not hit a season where new things weren't being developed and we're just looking at the value of AI as it is across the board. We're pretty close to that in some ways, but it's still largely based on there is a new thing, new capability, and therefore there's a big like, okay, now we're all moving to Claude, now we're all moving to OpenAI, now there are patterns in terms of enterprise and organizations that want something stable seem to be using Claude's API, right? That seems to be where their sweet spot. Individual users are liking ChatGPT's upfront thing, but the issue with all of this is that there's so many factors that are not things that we have a historical precedence for. I do think there's a lot of comparison to the .com bubble.
Right.
And I think what's different about this is that unlike the dot-com bubble, this has the potential to be profitable because it needs fewer people for businesses. And that is a thing that is factored in, talked about a little bit, right? But we don't entirely know, right? It isn't like everyone across the board could decide not to buy something from a website, which is something that happened early on, right? Like, I'm not going to give my credit card. Are you kidding me?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not reliant on individual people buying things. It's reliant on businesses making those decisions. So that's a little bit different in this context.
And yeah, let's talk a little bit about some of those comparisons. And I use Perplexity. Before I get into it, I will say really quick, because I'll forget to say this. Andy, you happen to say April of 2000. I graduated from UGA in May of 2000, right? So I was entering the world, and I've talked about that on the show. I was a big dumb idiot, and I came out of college with my new shiny degree, and I was like, "Here I am, world! All right, everybody, one at a time. Who's going to hire this guy?" I had a lot of ignorance coming out of that I'm now trying to correct for my own daughter and make sure she doesn't have the same experience, but. It is interesting. And I do remember this. I didn't really understand this as I was like, your head down in college. But as I was raising my head up and looking at the world out, it was very clear about this .com, bubble and what was going on. So you had a completely different experience, obviously, to me. I'm like emerging into the working world per se. And this was like the first thing that kind of impacted job potential and things like that. Probably no surprise that that's how I ended up being a firefighter. Before too long, within 3 years of graduating college, I was a full-fledged firefighter, which you did not need a degree for. So there's the irony there. The valuation consideration, let me just scroll down here a little bit. Okay, so Beth, this goes back to what you were saying. It says, this is from Perplexity, and just to kind of get the conversation, keep going here. Clear.com comparisons and warnings. So kind of what you were just saying, Beth. Well, you were saying maybe there's not as many, maybe we don't know, but this is what it pulled up. Speculation over fundamentals. Like 1999, valuation premia, I think that's how you say that, are being justified by distant TAM narratives rather than near-term cash flows, an imbalance that corrected violently when growth assumptions were revised from 2000 to 2002. Capacity ahead of demand. Telecom and hosting overbuilds then. GPUs, data centers, and power procurement now, both vulnerable to utilization shortfalls and rapid margin compression when pricing normalizes. Concentration risk, sector and index dependence on a few winners, magnified losses in 2000. Today's Magnificent Seven, which hold for that, are Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Tesla. Let me scroll back up here because I wasn't sure who the Magnificent Seven, who all the companies in there. Today, Magnificent Seven dynamic raises similar drawdown potential if leadership stumbles on regulation bites. And finally, it says liquidity and sentiment fragility. As in 2000, a turn in rates or risk appetite can swiftly puncture momentum, especially when leverage, vendor financing, or order backlogs obscure true end demand elasticity. Lots of big words in there, lots of stuff to get, kind of dive into, but I do see those and I do understand what they're saying as far as these are some of the things we saw then, but Beth, I certainly am not smart enough to know, maybe you're right. Maybe we can look back at that because we should always look back at history and look for those comparisons, but perhaps AI is too different. The big thing is this month, and the reason we're talking about this as a segment is there has been a lot of news about this bubble bursting. And so to me, it's not that it hasn't been in the news. I think everybody's sort of been talking about an AI bubble burst, but I don't know about you guys. I feel like it's come up more recently in the news in the last 30 days than ever any other time I can imagine that I remember as far as following this stuff. Do you guys get the same feeling? Is there just more people talking about it, or is there more there's something here?
Well, there's a lot more people talking about it, and people all the way up to the very top, like Sam Altman saying, yeah, I think, AI is in a little bit of a bubble. The valuations are frothy is what he's basically saying out loud. and others, right, who are sounding a warning about this is a little bit ahead of the game here. Let me talk quickly about just some structural problems that could make it hard to achieve the combination of demand and supply that's needed to monetize at the valuation levels that we see right now, and create this risk that investors are going to say, well, this is going to take a lot longer, like Andre's perspective. It's going to take a lot longer than you think. This is not going to come around the corner right now, while at the same time we're seeing tremendous advances every week in what's possible with AI. The actual infrastructure development and the other structural impediments could retard our progress in that way. So, for example, data centers, each data center is demanding a city level of electricity, and our grid wasn't designed to support that. So this is why billions and billions of dollars are having to be spent to build a data center close to where you need the delivery of it, right? So close to cities, and that's going to be disruptive to our economy, because while those systems are going to, those data centers are going to demand the electricity, they're not supplying it necessarily, although there are long-term projects with small nuclear reactors, for example, to try to provide additional sources of electrical generation. But right now, a lot of our electricity is coal-fired generation. So there's friction in this process of delivering on the presumed demand level that is going to drive the value of these companies. When you say OpenAI is worth $500 billion, that implies that there's a whole bunch of people spending a ton of money to run these data centers for them, and get the AI inference that is going to drive that valuation. Well, maybe that's not so easy, because we don't have the water, we don't have the electricity, etc. Construction, just doing the construction jobs for that. The CEO of ABB, one of the very largest of these companies out there, said, we don't have enough people and resources to build all of this. Okay, and how do you ramp up quickly enough to actually build that thing? In the world of semiconductors, there's a talent shortage, and the expertise to actually deliver on this massive volume of chip fabrication is not exactly there. So that'll slow things down. And then what happens if there's geopolitical disruption, like, China does in fact blockade Taiwan, where most of the chips are manufactured today? Oh, well, good news that TSMC has actually delivered for the first time some chips from their US-based facility. But there's the possibility of China saying, look, the world is trying to block us from moving forward with AI. We need the chips. That's our island. We're taking that over, and we're going to use it for China alone. Or we'll charge you a lot of money for that. And that's going to crimp margins. So I'm just kind of riffing here on the idea that there are a lot of possible points of intervention in the optimistic view, the non-bubble view of why these companies are worth so much right now. Right. And in the long run, I think they are, but there's going to be a possible trough in between now and then.
Right. Well, and there being a bubble doesn't mean that the bubble is empty. Right. So I think that is also like the idea of a house of cards is like, once something topples, there's no value inside it. It all topples. And I get the impression that this is more about the valuation being incorrect, not that there is no value. This is not this isn't a house of cards in that kind of way. But the other piece of this, I agree with Andy bringing up China, because China has the advantage of not having to go through the red tape, right? So there's still multiple companies, they're doing various things, but China can decide, yep, we're going to put nuclear reactors here and here and here, and then it happens. And in fact, it's part of why they're better and faster at nuclear reactors than we are, because they use them more frequently, and boom, 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 they just get them up. I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but I think that they're like, they can put a nuclear reactor up in a third of the time that the US can.
Yeah, I got to look up those numbers too, because I've mentioned this on the show that I had always heard it was like a decade, but I honestly feel like I need to go find the real answer to that. Like, what is a conceivable from approval to online for a U.S. nuclear reactor these days? Not like a 3 Mile Island where they're bringing back up one of the reactors, like no. Microsoft has. I suppose that's faster, right? But I'm just talking about raw land to nuclear reactor. I'd always heard that's like a decade. So it'd be interesting to see the comparison of that. I just saw, this is sort of just a quick thing, but I recommend it. I love the I know a lot of people do, but I love the YouTube channel Yes Theory. Phenomenal videos, and they're big, so that's not like I'm the only one, but they just had one talking about like this forest city, which, by the way, was done by Chinese builders and investors, but it's not in China. But it's literally this like $1 billion city, complete city with many high rises and stuff or whatever, and it's nearly empty. It's got like 9,000 people in it. It should have like a million, right? It's like a crazy thing. So they do build fast, and I think there's a lot there, to your point, Beth, but that's not without missteps along the way. I mean, there's many ghost cities in China where development got out ahead of perhaps the demand. And so whether they're moving faster than they should be, I guess time will tell. But, certainly on this show, we talk a lot about how quickly they are able to stand up, a third of the time, which is amazing if you think about it, right? So all right. Anything else on this one before we pivot to our last segment here? There'll be more to come on this. I mean, I think as we get towards the end of the year, this is going to come up more and more. So I'm sure we'll come back. We'll obviously circle back to the sort of the idea of an AI bubble and whether there's more evidence here. Go ahead, Andy.
My last point would be, if the bubble pops, buy the dip.
Yep. I'm sure a lot of people, I think somebody was saying that in the comments too. Somebody was saying, it's back a while now. Greg was saying one man's bust is another man's profit. So there's probably a lot of good ways to do that and look into that.
Andy's statement should not be considered the opinion of the Daily AI Show. He is an independent person saying,
yeah, right, exactly.
This is not financial advice.
But Andy said,
advice from me.
Yeah. Karl, we need Karl on the show. I'm sure Karl has some opinions on the investments and stuff. I know he's into that stuff. Okay. What I want to talk about, or what we're going to talk about here for the next 10 or so minutes, is something that kind of we ripped out of the news. We could have talked about it in the news, but I thought, no, I actually want to show this because I think it's important what Google's doing in terms of their AI studio. So I'm just going to bring up a screen and we're just going to have a little fun here, just kind of popping around and looking at what they did differently, as I can tell. And then we'll also show just a few quick examples, nothing crazy here. So Google AI Studio just did let's call it a rebranding, I think is the best name for it. And so I had an opportunity to kind of jump around. There's several things that they've done differently here. Everything from making it easier to monitor in your dashboards here. You can monitor more API usage, and they just made it much cleaner for you to do that, which I really appreciate, especially if you're a developer trying to figure out where those 10 cents add up, especially if you're doing stuff with, VO 3.1 right now. It's not cheap, I mean, it costs money to run these videos, and you certainly want to have a better understanding of where that is. But one of the other big changes here is that they've added system instructions. We've certainly seen this in Anthropic and OpenAI, but now you have system instructions that you can add over the top of projects inside of Google AI Studio, so you're not repeating yourself. So not a new technology, but certainly something welcomed inside of Google AI Studio. Now, some of the other things they've done is they've tried their best to bring in and really make it feel a little more multimodal. Beyond that, they also have this build section. I'm going to show you guys an example. I'm going to show you the coolest example, I think. But if we just click over to build here, you can actually see, this is the one I'm going to show you a demo of, which is chatting with Maps Live. If you literally want to see what the future of Google Maps is, or Waze, this is it. So I want to show this demo here in a second, but let's just look at some of these other ones. Like, they're there's like fit check and, games, I guess, on here and enhancements. And, you can home canvas, drag, drop, and visualize any product in your personal space. And if you click into one of these, what you're going to see is a very similar interface, which is you get the preview here that'll show up with some, how do you use this, right? But then we can also look back over at the code and see how it was built on the backside. We can remix this. And as you see on the left here, you also have options for like add more products, enhance product placement, improve the UI feedback, save scene, undo, redo. It almost has more like a lovable field where we're looking at the live demo, but they've given us something to start with, to play with. And then we can go over here and go, oh, what if it had a dark mode? What if it did this for me or it did that? Which I think is really, really cool. It's like, it's a definite playground now, for lack of a better term, of going in and exploring and figuring out the kind of things you can do. But what I love is that you don't necessarily have to start from scratch. So then you can also see like your apps here, and that's all underneath the build. By the way, if you don't know, it's aistudio.google.com is where you're going to find this. Everybody has access to it. It just depends on whether you've paid for API and different things like that, but you have access to the AI Studio if you have a Gmail account. So what I want to show really quick is, I'll show this one really quick, which is a lot of text, but basically what I said, if you were to read my prompt at the top here, I was basically saying, give me your best shot for a true prompt series that would really demonstrate your multimodal. Now, I didn't realize on this account that I didn't have any VO 3.1 set up, so I'll have to jump over to another screen to show you that part of it. But basically what I found interesting here is I just asked for the prompt, but Gemini not only wrote the prompt, but then gave me the results of the prompt, which is something you're not going to necessarily see ChatGPT do. It's not that it wouldn't if you asked it to run it, but Gemini just has that sort of like built-in innate, like, oh, this is probably what you want. I was like, this is exactly what I wanted. You saved me the whole extra step by running it yourself, basically saying, here's the prompt and here's the result. And so in this case, it just came up with like a fantasy sort of, short story or whatever. And then it created some images here. In true Gemini fashion, this is the part I hate the most. It says it fixed the picture or it did something to the picture, and it did not. It just tells you it did. This is something I run into. It's the biggest issue I have with images right now in Gemini is, one, it'll tell you it did a 16:9 and it doesn't. And two, it'll tell you here's the update to the photo and there's zero change to it. It'll drive you nuts. So not surprisingly, it made zero changes, even though it told us it did. And then it went ahead and created some other images along the way that could be used for things like storyboarding. So we have our antagonist here, and I guess it looks like she's finding a treasure or whatever it is. You can kind of see it here on the screen. And then I was like, hey, what about the video side of it? This is when it reminded me that I didn't have that set up on this side. So I'll show you that other part in a second. But very cool. I think it's easy to use. I love that you're able to naturally flow from text into image. Ideally, when it's all sort of put together, you could flow naturally into video, then back over to text. And I think that's really, really, really impressive. And if you add system instructions to that, as well as what you can do for temperature and things, I think you're getting a really, really valuable system. And of course, we just showed you what you could do in the build area. But let's look really quickly at this feature. This is the Maps grounded feature with Chat with Maps Live. So this, I would imagine, if it's not already on the phones, I don't think it's on my Google Maps right now, but I use Google Maps all the time, especially when I was over in Europe. It took us everywhere. It was indispensable in Greece, in Athens, where you can't read that the signs in the street don't have English letters to them, which makes it really tricky when you're looking at things literally in Greek and you're trying to find your way around. Thank God for Google Maps and getting us around those cities. So I'm a huge fan. And of course, I use this.
Let me interject just to say one quick thing, which is what you're demonstrating here now is something that Google just completed, which is the integration of all the information that's in Google Maps for every one of 250 million locations around the world into Gemini's resources. So now Gemini, when you interact anywhere with Gemini, it's going to have knowledge of everything that's in Google Maps. That's kind of a moat, right?
It's pretty amazing.
That's a big moat. Just the data that they developed over years with those little, those human-driven vehicles with the cameras on them to do street view,
Right.
and then aligning that with the data that has been input by the owners of those businesses and locations. All of that information now is part of the data set that Gemini is going to have access to.
So we're going to try to run this live. I'm going to try. If not, I already had one that I ran earlier today, so I can show you what it did. But assuming it'll take my mic and you guys can hear it, which is the part I'm not 100% sure. You never really know on this one, but I am sharing my whole window, so hopefully it will work, I think. But let's try it really quick. I'm going to start it up here, and then I'll pause just to make sure you guys can hear it on your end, okay? And then if you say, yep, then we'll keep moving here. All right. Let's start with, can you hear Gemini?
Quietly, yes, very quietly.
Really quietly?
Yeah.
It sounds like we're hearing from your mic.
So it's not coming through.
Your speakers, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, that's okay.
I think you have to share the tab in order for the audio to come through.
And of course, I probably can't because I'm sharing but I will try really quick. Give me 1 second, because you have to do that in Chrome if you're going to do that. So let's just try really quick and see if we can get it to load.
So just a reminder for folks that when you are doing something for free from a company that makes money, you're the product. So they are training on your data when you get in this and do things. Still 100% worth it in lots of ways, but definitely pay attention to what data you're putting in.
All right, let's see if you can hear this one, and then I have it shared on the tab. So let's try really quick.
Hi there. I'm a demo agent powered by Grounding with Google Maps. This technology lets me use Google Maps' real-time information to give you accurate and relevant answers. To show you how it works, let's plan a quick afternoon itinerary together. You can talk to me with your voice or type. Just use the controls below to mute or unmute. To start, what city are you thinking of for our afternoon adventure?
Let's go to Key West, Florida.
Please wait while I get that information. Key West, Florida sounds like a wonderful choice. Now that we have our city, what kind of food are you in the mood for there?
Ooh, I'm looking for some local food down near Duval Street.
I'll use Grounding with Google Maps for that request. Here are some local food options near Duval Street, Key West, Florida. Kaya Island Eats. This outdoor outpost with counter seating dishes up island-inspired fare, including tacos and salads, and also
you know
features
what?
live.
Actually, I remember I once ate at Blue Heaven Review. Is that one of them here?
Give me a moment while I look into that. Blue Heaven Restaurant in Key West, Florida is an iconic landmark known for its Floridian Caribbean cuisine and key lime pie.
Yeah, that's the one. Don't they have the roosters and the chickens roaming around while you eat?
I'll use Grounding with Google Maps for that request. Yes, Blue Heaven in Key West, Florida is known for its chickens and roosters freely roaming around the outdoor dining area. Some find it charming, while others may not enjoy their presence. Feel free to ask, what is the vibe at Blue Heaven?
Yeah, it's definitely a vibe at Blue Heaven. It's one of my favorite places. Hey, after I eat lunch at Blue Heaven, I want to make my way down towards Mallory Square. And one of my favorite places to go is Irish Kevin's, because I love the music there. What time does Irish Kevin's open so I can start listening to music?
Please wait while I get that information. Irish Kevin's in Key West, Florida is open every day from 11 a.m. to 3:30 a.m. Their kitchen is open from 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. Is Irish Kevin's wheelchair accessible?
That's great. That really helps me out. Now, last question. The last time I was down in Key West, I remember going to a building that was a former Pan Am building. Where is that place that I can go eat again?
Give me a moment while I look into that. First Flight Island Restaurant and Brewery is located in the former Pan Am building in Key West, offering American fare and house brews in an aviation-themed space with a palm-shaded courtyard. The birthplace of Pan Am is a bar at the same address, featuring craft beer and a menu of well-presented
Yeah,
dishes.
that's the place for sure. Okay, great. So I'm going to start at Blue Heaven. Then I'm going to go maybe get a drink and listen to live music at Irish Kevin's. Then I'm going to go maybe have a bite to eat at First Flight. And then I want to go down to Mallory Square. What time do you think I should get there to see the sunset celebration?
I'll use grounding with Google Maps for that request. Mallory Square is open 24 hours, but the sunset celebration at Mallory Square is open nightly from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., which is when you'd likely experience the sunset festivities. Perfect. So that's lunch at Blue Heaven, followed by a visit to Irish Kevin's, a bite to eat at First Flight Island Restaurant and Brewery, and then finishing the day at the sunset celebration at Mallory Square in Key West, Florida. This is just a glimpse of how grounding with Google Maps helps enable developers to create personalized, accurate, and context-aware experiences. Check out the README in the code to see how you can make this difference.
Okay, so we'll stop there. Look, that is so cool, right? It's so fun to be able to do that. Now, I have a lot of knowledge of Key West. As far as I got married, I've been down there many, many times. So I do know some of the local places, but had I not, I could have asked questions and it would have tried to, plan a day for me. And go there. By the way, anybody that goes to Key West can follow along with what I just gave you. You're not going to be upset with that itinerary. My wife would just add, go to the Butterfly Garden, which is closer to the other side, to the southernmost point. But other than that, that is a good day on Duval Street as far as I'm concerned. And then Cisco saying maybe some key lime pie. You can't go wrong with some key lime pie in there as well. So there's some other features, and I didn't bring up the VO1, but we're kind of on time. That's okay. So the VO1, basically, I just had to open it up because I already had I had funding for the API, and you do have to set up your API keys and stuff. So I'd run it through my scaled account. But as you would imagine, it's very, very similar to what you just saw with the grounding with Google Maps. But you're able to create videos just like people have seen in Flow and things like that. So you guys have certainly seen that before, but it was very cool that I was able to give it this really long prompt with all this storytelling and thoughts and keywords and all that. And it created a really cool 8-second video of that same character that we saw earlier, going up to like the cauldron or whatever that glowing thing was in the short story. So anyway, your guys' thoughts on that? I think the map thing is cool as hell. So what do you guys think?
I'm impressed. I been noting in 2025 how Google is really coming into the fore. Logan Kilpatrick moved over here. I forget who mentioned that in the chat, but came over from OpenAI. Oh, you did? It was Beth. Oh, good. Well, this is your point then, Beth. Go ahead. Make that point. Google is on fire.
Yeah. Logan used to work for OpenAI, and right after custom GPTs came out, he moved over to Google, and he's part of the team that is working with the AI Studio, and it has continued to push really exciting new features, new ways to interact that make sense. Right? It's been a really great run.
So like I said, I use the map side. Now that's just one of the things they release as far as Google AI Studio. So I highly recommend anybody going in there. I mean, God, it couldn't be easier these days to go in and just play around. I mean, Google's basically opened up the doors and said, here, go ahead, go create. So I don't think you have to be a developer. You don't have to know code. You can see that on the back end, but just like a Lovable or anything like that, you really can go in there and just vibe code. In fact, they have a section for that. They're not idiots, right? They put that into the product and made sure you have it. So I kind of feel like over the months, like Google AI Studio was this thing that we would talk about and be like, oh, let us show you something we built in Google AI Studio. And it was like this other thing. Although the developers go there. But that's clearly not the path they're taking here. I think they want your general AI enthusiasts in Google AI Studio playing, building, creating things, having other people remix them. I think it's very cool that you could publish an app and Beth can pick up my app and be like, oh, I took it from there and I remixed it. I did something different with it. So I think it's very, very cool. I mean, the maps part obviously is a big deal. You can imagine how quickly that's going to be helpful just on your phone, walking down the street, and whether it's your glasses or talking to your phone or otherwise, it could be pretty amazing.
And one of the other things just to keep in mind, if you're doing that, go learn, play. But as with all the other systems, you will hit a place where it will say you are done for the day. So be cognizant of what you're doing. And I don't know if they're better at this because I haven't tried to build something recently, but for me, you are done for the day just came out of the blue. Like, cool, we're cooking together. Yay. See you tomorrow. So like be aware of what you're doing. You don't lose anything, keeps it in your account, but if you were not planning to be done for the day, you want to make sure that you have a second second path that you can take.
My project, not recently, but back in the day with Claude, that was my experience with Claude. Like, we're having fun, we're jamming, we're doing great. And Claude's like, you're done. Go ahead. It might as well said, go take a walk. It's nice outside, Brian. Go outside for 3 hours. You're banned. And then it doesn't say that, but it should. It should just be like, have you been outside? I know we're having fun, but you're now on a timeout, Brian. And like, I'm going to need you to go get some fresh air. You cannot sit at the computer all day. So whether it's a good thing or bad thing. Yeah.
You seem more into this than I am. Sorry.
Poor Claude, just breaking people's hearts when they're in the middle. They were in the flow, in the flow state. All right. Well, listen, we're going to wrap things up for today. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Beth, I'm glad you were able to get in and join us. I know I could see it was a battle. But appreciate you. We'll have more news tomorrow and more topics as well. In fact, I actually swapped out one of my topics for segments, which we'll definitely get to this week because I wanted to show the Google AI Studio. But the original one I had in there was showing people how you can really effectively, Nate Jones talked about this too, but how you could effectively take the same idea of these skills we've been hearing a lot in with Claude. You're not tied directly to Claude. And in fact, the first time I saw that, it's one of the rare times I commented on TikTok in Nate Jones' thing. And I was like, I do this already. And he was like, you can do this in any of the other tools too. I'm like, I do this in the other tools. So this idea of like, I've always talked about this master and router prompt, like that works for tasks, but it also works for skills. You have always been able to basically set yourself up with master prompting and routers that say, when necessary, go to this skill and then do these things, be this person or this skill set or whatever, then come back and do it. Almost like we see on modern day MCP. So I didn't have time to build that. And I wanted to show Google AI Studio, but at some point this week, I will demonstrate to people like, hey, that's great. And I'm nothing against skills with Claude because I think it's amazing what they're doing, but you can do similar things with any basic prompt gems, prompt builder, or otherwise. You can mimic a certain set of skills. Whether it's as good or not, I don't know. So that'll be coming up at some point this week as well.
It's not.
It is. I'm just going to say it is to be contrarian. Now that you said it's not. Jeez, Beth. We'll make sure it's a day that both Beth and I can be here. How about that?
Karl, throw down. Andy's
listen,
in the corner going.
You know me. I'm happy to be wrong with that stuff. I will show you what I know. How about that? And then you can tell me why it's not, which is great. Okay, so that's it for today, guys. Have a great day. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what we're doing. For our longtime listeners, it's no secret we've sort of changed the format a little bit the last couple of weeks. We always saw October as sort of our test phase. If you'd like to give us feedback about how you are liking the new, where we're doing more news every day, as well as 2 main segments instead of one long topic the entire show. Hey, we want your feedback. We ultimately feel like this is better and faster moving. Perfect. Jude says, love these everyday topics, practical use cases. Great show. Thank you, Jude. We appreciate that. We're still figuring it out too. I mean, we're almost 600 episodes in, but we're still figuring out our legs a little bit here. So, we always will be happy to take some of your guys' feedback. Obviously, we want you guys to love it as much as we do. So yeah, there you go. If you have any thoughts or comments, let us know and we'll be happy to listen. One great way to do that is to be part of our community. It's free and you can go to the Daily AI Show community.com in order to sign up for that. It's just a Slack community. It's a way for you to be involved outside of the live hours, especially if you're not able to be with us live like so many of our fun folks in the comments are right now. So that's it for today, guys. Have a wonderful one, and we will see you again tomorrow.